Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining in, Dr. Judy WTF. And I'm really honored to continue to guide you, and hopefully you're learning something that will make a difference to your life. And of course, this is a call-in show, as many of you know, and please feel free to call in at 323-524-2599. Hopefully the audio and the video are working okay. Is there a little bit of a delay there, or is it okay?
I think we're okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Okay, so hopefully everything is working fine from a techno point of view. And tonight's topic is the effects of verbal abuse. Of course, the effects of verbal abuse, not only on the psyche, but on the soma, or the body, as well. And I'm going to start by saying that the Psychological Healing Center is a place that you can come or zoom into and heal your childhood wounds. And in specific, what we're going to be focusing today on is the childhood wound of verbal abuse. And of course, there are compounding effects when there are different various forms of abuse. I will go over the abuses just so that you know what they are and how I see through the lens of the mind map. So if you look at panel number 1, you will see that there is the darkness and the light. And the light represents your best of your best. It's your self-actualized potential and hopefully manifested as much as possible in your lifetime. Now, the shadows are shadows that block you, that shadow over your development, that stunt your growth psychologically and even physically. And these shadows are the abuses and neglects, and they are verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, smothering, and then the other one that I bring up quite a bit about on many, many shows is narcissistic abuse, which I define as a system gone wrong where parents lack empathy and they put their own needs before a child or their children. One of my reasons for going through the abuses and neglects is because I am working very diligently on a video series that I'm creating called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, which I will be conducting panel by panel. The purpose is for you to either do it yourself. So this is a journey to healing. It's a do-it-yourself course. Hopefully I'll be done with this filming and it'll be ready to go in about 2+ months. And if you want information about it, certainly call me and we will give you more information about this. Many people don't want to go to therapy. They just want to learn and process their feelings via video. So this is a psychoeducational journey that you can all take. And so I want to go through all the wounds of childhood in preparation for understanding how we are limited and how human disconnect really hurts us and limits us and traumatizes us. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the different types or signs of verbal abuse. And according to Safe Horizons, something that I pulled off of the net, they are well set through these 5 points: criticism and judgment, boundary violations, such as an invasion of privacy, possessiveness and controlling behavior, manipulation and dismissal of you and your feelings. So verbal abuse can come at any age and any stage. Clearly, when you're a baby, you don't understand words because that is a pre-verbal time in your life and your cognitions have not quite come online. However, we're still encoding messages from our parents or caregivers. And it could be a message that comes through a look, a tone, not simply not being there. It could come from a touch or a rough touch or even a slap. It can come in so many forms. And so if you have verbal abuse and you can't combine that or really compound that with physical abuse and other forms of abuse, then it really can shatter us. So this again, it's a call-in show, 323-524-2599. And I'm hoping that everyone who wants a copy of my Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect book can avail themselves of a copy by simply asking for one. I will be happy to download to you the PDF version, and you can get the actual hard copy off of Amazon.com that you can then mark up and ask, put little questions marks to. And then, of course, if you like, you can pair your journey with one of the people on our staff who are well trained in the mind map system and will take you from your wounds of childhood, how you encoded them, through decoding all of the damages on your psyche, and then paradigm shifting out of the mess. Another thing that I want you to know is that I am trying my best to do blogs. Every week, I will try to do a blog on the show that I am speaking about, and there should be one up there, if not already up there, on verbal abuse. So check it out, psychologicalhealingcenter.com, go to the blog section, and you should be seeing it up there so you can read a little bit more in depth and summarize what it is that I'm talking about today. So many of you, maybe all of you listening in, have encountered some form of verbal abuse. It may have come from a teacher, it may have come from a bully, it might have come from a relative, and most often it comes from a family member, and the most damaging, of course, being mother, father, caregiver, because those are the people we look up to. They are our gods. They are the people who are who we want affirmation, praise, love, a good view of our sense of self from. So we are always looking to our parents to get information, to get messages. Who are we? Are we good? Are we bad? Are we ugly? Are we cute? Are we smart? Are we stupid? Who are we? And so directly with verbal abuse, you're getting a very clear verbal message. With nonverbal abuse, which is either pre-verbal, because you can't understand, you're too young, or simply looks and passive-aggressive kinds of touches or glances, or even facial expressions that express contempt. Now, these are also sort of the nonverbal ways of giving you messages. So what are these messages really doing? So if you look at panel 1, as you can see, they are absolutely shadowing over your well-being, because every time someone says something that is verbally abusive, you will question yourself. You're not going to automatically think, wow, mom has poor parenting skills. You might automatically think, there is something wrong with me. I must be stupid. And so we move to panel 2 now, and we see that these verbal assaults, they crack us up. You see that metaphor there of the broken glass, panel 2. It's shattering our psyche, and it is actually disconnecting us from our primary caregiver and leading us to question ourselves and putting us in pain. So this is panel 2, your reaction to the wound of verbal abuse. It might be anywhere from shock to anxiety to a pain in your body. Why is that person talking to me like that? Now I have a headache. Now I have a stomach ache. Now I have a backache. And the body keeps the score. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It reminds me of the title, because it does. The body keeps the score. And then what happens is that all of these messages, they encode into the fiber of your being. And let's also talk about the wonderful messages, because certainly not all encodings are negative. Now I'm concentrating on the verbally abusive ones, but encodings can also be very affirming, very positive, very nurturing messages like, I really believe in you, or I love the way you're able to focus in on your work. These are messages that we also soak up. The ones that are not so helpful and really damaging are verbal messages, and I've pretty much heard them all. But the ones that I hear most often in the treatment room are words like, I'm not good enough, I'm stupid, I'm a loser, I'm not lovable. These are just examples, and they go on and on and on. When I talk about narcissistic abuse, the messages encoded have to do with not existing, or existing only to please the parent, or not being loved unless. Okay, so I'm trying to help you distinguish between verbal abuse that really stings and disconnects, and verbal abuse that absolutely annihilates your being. So just a little bit more on that. So you understand that we're internalizing all these messages. As children, we're sponges. We sponge everything up. Our boundaries are pretty loose in that things are supposed to flow through. Why are they supposed to flow through? Because we're learning, we're ingesting everything. And so as we ingest everything along with these horrible negative messages, then we're buying in, we're believing it. Again, most children don't conclude that their parents don't know what they're talking about, or have parenting skills that are really poor and destructive. They buy into these messages that they're stupid, ugly, they're a loser, they're unlovable, they will never amount to anything, so on and so forth. And of course, I want to hear from you, because I love to hear from you. And I'd like to hear how verbal abuse has impacted you and your past, and how it has carried into your everyday life. And you're also welcome to ask a question in the chat room. So hopefully everyone can hear me and see me okay. I've had a little technical problems today with my Zoom, but hopefully everything is working out all right. So please do call. That number is 323-524-2599. So verbal abuse in a very... We do have a call, Dr. G. Oh, okay. Really appreciate that. So thank you for calling in. And what is your name, please? Okay, call back. Yeah. I got it. Okay.
On verbal abuse and its effects.
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for calling in. And what is your name, please?
Hi, you can call me Bob.
Okay. Yes, I didn't quite hear your name, but I'll call you. What would you like me to call you?
Can you hear me good, Bob?
Okay, all right, great. So tell me what's going on with you and what inspired you to call tonight.
Okay. My name is Bob. Can you hear me correctly?
Okay, so what went on around verbal abuse?
Mostly homophobic slurs and comments at an early age, and then to young adulthood and adolescent, and then even as a grown adult doing all my work, you still feel that sling of hatred of just being who you are, that you need to shadow away from it to protect yourself.
You know what's very painful, Bob, and I'm sorry if there's an echo because I'm using my phone as volume tonight. What's very painful is when we grow up with verbal abuse or other kinds of abuse, and then of course we hope that the world will be a better place for us to heal and a more welcoming place. And then when we look to our parents and they're not there and they're abusive, and we look to our immediate family or immediate circle and they're not very kind either, and then we experience the world and lo and behold, they may not be very kind at all. I use this word called the double dungeon of darkness, where you can't really turn to your mother or your father. Let's call this kind of like a triple dungeon of darkness, right? You're really trapped because you're looking for somebody to give you some kind of a level of connection, attunement, soothing, mirroring, because whether we like it or not, we're wired to connect. And so if we keep experiencing the world as this disconnecting place, guess what it's doing in terms of triggers?
It keeps reinforcing it. And as a person who is gay, and even though I tried to act like I wasn't, people would always say, oh, well, I could tell that you are, or you have mannerisms. It's like I couldn't even be a private person, even hearing the slangs and the homophobic words as a child and teenager, now an adult. It still puts you on high alert to just
very much
protect yourself.
Right. And it creates what I believe is a kind of a PTSD, so that the vigilance goes up, kind of a sense of a hypervigilance, and then you're starting to close down or hide or leave early or whatever you do as your defense mechanism against these assaults. Can you see the connection between what's going on in your current triggers and what happened in your childhood?
I do, because if I was told that embrace who you are as a unique human being and love yourself, versus being slandered upon you not fitting in the mold of whatever society was, then is, it kind of goes full circle, and it reminds you of that. But since that was so ingrained in your cells, you kind of feel it reemerge, because it like cutting your hair, it still keeps growing back same color.
Yeah, and it's almost like that circus mirror that's cracked, and I forgot what they're called, those mirrors that make you look taller or wider or
like the holograms.
I refer to it as a cracked lens of perception, where nothing is really clear feedback. Everything's distorted. So walking into work, for example, instead of having everything just be normal, regular, polite, respectful, now everything is distorted. And you recognize, Bob, of course, that many of us are not healed. So their unhealed state is also at work, and whatever's happening with them is triggering them and breaking them down and having them repeat and project their childhood traumas and wounds onto people like yourself and others. So this is an unhealed world triggering each other and then creating a lot of chaos and defenses and breakdowns, and it keeps reverberating. And until people heal individually, they cannot heal globally. There's no way, because our global mess and even the work mess, the disconnect at the corporate level, is a result of the deep foundational childhood wounds that all the employees and the bosses there haven't healed from. Because healthy people, do they really want to put people down? I mean, What
No,
for? What's the benefit? If somebody's really feeling good about
nothing.
themselves and somebody is able to connect and have empathy to another human being, what do you think they feel like doing?
They want to lift people up, not bring them down. That's what healthy people want to do.
Exactly. So if you look at panel number 3, I'll just have that go up there so people can see. So there we have 2 strands. It's again my metaphor for mother and father and the toxic bond between them and the toxic ties between them and the little children trying to climb up the ladder of this system gone wrong, the blueprint built poorly, unsustainably, and there's all this toxicity in the environment, which again is replicated in the toxicity in your work environment, unfortunately. And it's also a metaphor for encoding. So now you're encoding things like, I'm not this enough and that enough. And what do you think are some of your encodings, Bob? What have you identified?
Well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that me being gay in a very small town and a city, I became just one of the outcasts, almost not so much, yes, a minority, but also meant to be hated upon, even when it came to religion. I live right around a couple Catholic schools, and that was something about that I grew up, but I've learned a lot more. But even though you're educated, when you hear that, you still feel a little bit of a shrill to just, you hear ignorance, but you still need to just protect yourself. You feel like you have to protect your surroundings. And
who is that thick-skinned? Nobody is that, there are people who are more thick-skinned than others when we've been abused verbally and otherwise. Our defense mechanisms are less than functional, and they're more permeable, and people can get in there and through to your emotions quicker, easier. And so if you were to listen for your core beliefs, what kind of messages did you hear from your mother or your father growing up?
Well, first of all, that it was well, I've heard from my mother and father growing up. Let's see that he's weird, or let's hope he's not gay, and that he's gay, so let's not ever talk about that. Or I'm ashamed of it. I think it's disgusting. Not my son is not gay, and if
so
he
I'm
is,
hearing. So I'm hearing weird.
And then
I'm hearing disgusting. Yes.
And then with my mother, I when I did tell her that, she just said, "Get away from me." And my father did say, "I'll never jump for joy." So it was almost like, I don't want nothing to do with you. So the world that I went into, no matter how much it just felt like a very unsafe place.
Yes. So also the rejection of you're not like what I expected you to be, and so therefore you don't fit in, and I don't want you as part of me is also the message that I'm hearing. You're disgusting, you're weird, you don't belong here, go away.
And one of them was that I shouldn't have even have been born, that I've identified with, because
that's one of the most destructive.
But I know that's a lie, because every life has value and meaning. But it was to them, that's what they believed, that you weren't what we wanted, and now what? Just
now what? So you incorporated
exactly.
all those messages, you sponged them in. Did you ever, as a child, think to yourself, That's not true. My parents have horrible judgment. They have horrible parenting skills. What's the matter with them that they would speak to their son this way? Did you ever for a minute think that?
There were brief seconds that I would observe my peers at school, maybe during the holidays, and seeing how much the parents loved each other's the children. But then when I went back to my home, the predominant overwhelmed the less dominant, if you could get that. Like there were little pairs of, yes, you deserve better, but the overwhelming factor was the factor that it dominated it. That,
okay, so
yeah.
So I wanna talk a little bit about toxic ties, because they're toxic ties, or think of it as a one-way street. Okay, you're tied to them, but they're not quite as tied to you. You have this really strong bond to them. However, they lack empathy and they're not as connected to you as you to them, which makes the whole thing imbalanced, doesn't it? So if you're clinging on for dear life, then I always refer to Alice Miller, Drama of a Gifted Child, because her sentence was so brilliant. And that was her observation that children would rather be the bad ones in a good world. So meaning that they're right and you're wrong. Okay. And if that's the case, you're crazy, they're sane, their messages count, and there's something wrong with you because they're giving you accurate feedback. And that's the problem with our thinking, is that we really think that they're giving us accurate feedback. And even if the feedback is horrible, we'd rather be weird and unlovable and all of those core beliefs than to think that there's something wrong with our parents. That would be way too dangerous. So that's how we buy in. And then we have this toxic bond going. And guess what it sets us up to do in the future?
Chaos, defenses, breakdowns, and pick people that would mirror that. And
you know your stuff. You know your stuff. And I hope, audience, that you're listening. And for those of you who have heard me several times, it's worthy to repeat the what the Freud. The what the Freud is the blueprint that you keep repeating day after day, relationship after relationship, pattern after pattern, thought after thought. And in the case of verbal abuse, these messages ingrain into your head, and like this broken record, play over and over and over and keep you up at night, and it becomes obsessional and you can't stop the play. It's just like somebody
you also dream about
press the play button and you don't know how to stop it. And then you may stop it for a minute. Maybe you stop it with drugs, sex, and rock and roll, proverbially speaking, of course. Or maybe in reality, you stop it with defense mechanisms, but then they don't work. The defenses don't hold up. And then there's the pain again, and there are the thoughts again. And then you go out into the world, and guess what you hear? You hear again from your coworkers, you're weird, you're not wanted. What are the messages that
or
you're
homophobic
at work? What
homophobic slurs when you know that you're gay and you're living in a world where that's not acceptable, with, I guess, this circumstances you're around or with the corporation you're with, and it's hard to even be your true self. You kind of feel like you always have to be on guard, just from an early message.
So somehow you're not a member of their club, correct?
Exactly. And
That's
you know
message.
that, and I've known that at an early age. I was just not a member of the club.
Right, that you're an outsider, and that sort of reminds me of what your mother said to you, that you don't belong, you're gay, you don't belong in this family, you're disgusting.
Right, you're weird,
I
and
don't
I don't
want
know
you to
where
be.
he came from. That was one interesting thing. She always used to say, "I don't know where he came from," and I would look at her, and I couldn't even identify with that woman who gave birth to me. To say, "I don't know
Yeah,
where he came from."
and that's not a bad defense mechanism, because that's what we need to do, is we need to pull away from these horrible messengers that tear us down, the demean, the devalue, the destroy. We have to keep away from people who do that to us, because if they're doing that to us, then first of all, they're not healthy, as we discussed. So they haven't really delved into their childhood wounds, because healthy people do not get joy out of putting other people down. They don't invest in the game of demean, devalue, destroy, and discard. That's just not their game. And so, so you can also look at it from the point of view of, if you are getting your information from a sick source, an unhealed source, like your parents and like the people in your work environment, then you can bet on it that this is not very good information. And so logically, if you say to yourself something like, well, the messages here are not accurate because it's coming from a sick source.
They're lies.
Therefore, what would you do if you interpreted it like that? Let's say you're getting
And
inaccurate information from a science experiment that you're trying to conduct. Would you use that information to make conclusions?
I would still use that information, that at this point, after all my studying and research of my own growth, to get out of that spider web, that they're all lies. And
Right. So,
but then you still, it's a trigger when you hear it.
I'm gonna move on in a minute, give other people an
Sure.
opportunity, but I just wanted to make the point that it would sure be nice, right, Bob, if this wasn't continuously triggering and triggering and triggering. I wish for you and everyone out there that we could dismantle these nasty triggers, and people could push buttons, because we're not in control of what they do. However, we are in control of what we do in reaction and in response to what they do. So Bob, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. I thank you for calling in.
Thank you so much.
I hope people are learning.
Thank you so much for taking my call, Dr. Judy, and you have a beautiful night.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You do the same. Okay, so I'm hoping that you're understanding the depth of these negative core beliefs due to verbal abuse. These messages go in very, very deep, and they affect us and they infect us, and then they reverberate in our head, and then we have a difficult time really getting them out of our head. And in the mind map process, we take a good look at the source, which is probably mother, father, caregiver, and then making the distinction between the source, who put that in your head, and then the trigger. So now, who's in your life that triggers those messages? And oftentimes they are the coworkers, or they are teachers, or they are significant others. And unfortunately, when we come from verbally abusive families, we often pick verbally abusive partners who then recapitulate the wound and take us on this long ride once again down into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And I'm just wondering if there are any questions in the chat room. Nobody there?
most people just talking, but there is someone said, great show, love the channel from Norway. So just.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be talking to people all the way in Norway. I feel like I travel the world just by sitting in a chair. That sounds like a nice poem, actually. Just inspired me to write about that. I'm traveling the world by sitting in this chair and hoping that my verbal messages get through to you and hoping that they make a difference, because what I'm wishing for everyone is that you do the work so that you become hardy, that you become not so trigger happy. And again, if you dismantle the trigger, then you can push on those verbal messages, and they won't tear you down. They won't create this falling apart, so to speak, this emotional falling apart into chaos, defenses, and eventual breakdowns. So you could see how we self-define in the eyes of our parents. As babies, we look into the eyes of mom, dad, caregiver, and we're seeing who are we. And going back to Dr. John Bowlby, in order for us to have that healthy human psyche, we have to have eye contact and skin contact, and we have to be nurtured in the best way possible and mirrored and attuned to. And then when we get a little bit older, we are looking forward to our verbal development. And then when we hear words that are interesting and fun, and we pull in words from the world that educate us and make us smile and stir good emotions, it's sad that those words, just words, can be used as weapons. And I was thinking earlier about the little saying, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me. Not true. Not true at all. As a matter of fact, sticks and stones, which I'll talk about next time, because I'm going to be talking about physical abuse, they hurt. And I have no doubt that they damage severely, and we'll get into that more next episode. However, the words, they sting right through. They get into your head and they stay there. And then someone will trip up that message, just like that trigger. And there it'll go again. You know, you might it might be dormant for days or months or years. And then you think, oh, I'm over that one. And then someone will come along and say, you know, you're really stupid. And ooh, there it goes again. Boom, boom, boom. Chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So the words are what builds us. Words build sentences. Words are building ideas, philosophies. Words can be also cruel and stinging and so on. And that's what we're talking about tonight, is how our parents' words can be soothing, or they can sting us, and they can break us. So if there are any questions, I would love to hear from you. And I would love to hear more about the kinds of words that you heard growing up that really stay with you today and how they've impacted your life.
I do have a question.
Okay.
How do you deal with emotional dysregulation caused by verbal abuse triggers?
Okay, great question, because that's exactly what I'm talking about: chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So how do you deal with it, right? You know my answer if you've been listening for many episodes or reading the book, which don't forget, please pick up a copy up of Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect. So how do you deal with the emotional dysregulation? You have to dismantle the negative core belief by going back, identifying the perpetrators of those horrible core beliefs, and then processing the anger around it, the misperceptions around it, the misperceptions of self around it, the misperceptions of the world around it, the sense of betrayal, the anxiety that it caused you, the depression it caused you, the pain around your heart it caused you, the bodily tensions and sickness in your stomach and your muscles caused you. So all of those feelings, when they get stuck in your head, that means you haven't processed the emotions. When you're able to, through a journey, the mind map journey, release those feelings, now you can address all of the painful, angry, betraying emotions and push back, and then come through the other side in through a truth dialogue. It's a little more information here about truth dialogue. It's an opportunity to really push back therapeutically and express things that you can never express to your parents. So speaking of words, we will use your words therapeutically to undo the damage so that you can be in charge here, and that you can have some power around this, and you don't have to be at the effect of those words. Otherwise, they just stay stuck in there. I hope that answers the question. Maybe give a thumbs up if it does. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also know that there is that mind map video series that you can purchase, which is a basic course in mind map. It's a do it yourself if you want it to be. It's $195, and you can just purchase it off the website, be the psychologicalhealingcenter.com, and it will be a Vimeo that you can download, and you can learn all the panels. And again, I'm working on the next video, Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, which will be chock full of information, and it will take you on a journey through healing the hole in the soul caused by apathy, the most painful variety of human disconnect. There's nothing more painful than somebody that you love not caring about you. There's nothing more painful than somebody that you bonded to who just isn't bonded to you and can easily dismiss you. So that's what I'm working on now. Feel free to call in about it, and you'll have more information about it. And in the meantime, can you now begin to see how these verbal messages, just like think about it as encodings, but we're emotional beings. So we latch on to words. Why do we latch on to words? Because we want to know, who am I? What do you think about me? Mom, Dad, am I valuable to you? Am I a member of the family to you? Am I important? Am I lovable? What do you think about me? Because those thoughts are very important to me. And I'm going to take those thoughts and make them to mean who I am. And when things go well, that's a beautiful thing, but they don't always go well. So if those words are not, you're lovable, you're beautiful, we accept you, we welcome you into the family. If they're not those words, what are you supposed to think about yourself when you hear words like, you're not welcome in the family, you're stupid, you're a loser, you're worthless, you shouldn't have even been born? That's about the harshest one. I hear that in my office. Every once in a while, people will go through their core beliefs, and I'll hear that, and I wish I was never born. That's a pretty heavy one and very indicative of the harsh words and the harsh treatment that they underwent, the apathy behind that. Because if in their mind they feel that they shouldn't be here, they must on some level feel very, very unwanted by their family of origin. So I hope that you're starting to connect these dots. It's very important that we don't just isolate symptoms, and that's why I'm not a really big fan of symptom management, even though I treat anxiety and depression and OCD and narcissistic injuries and all kinds of symptoms. I don't treat them symptom by symptom. I treat them by going to the cause, because that's the only way I know how to identify the problem and then dismantle the problem and then shift out of the problem. Because like fleas, symptoms jump. So one day you're anxious and maybe the next day you're depressed, and then another day you're partaking in defense mechanisms like drinking too much or eating too much. So everything is coming from a source. And that's what we're doing in the mind map system. We're sourcing it all so that you can understand your psyche, so that you can map your psyche, and that eventually you won't need guidance from a therapist or even you'll know the videos so well because you'll be so informed. You will be able to think like a shrink, because that's what I want you to do. And unlike traditional therapy, the goal is for you to become independent of therapy and knowledgeable about processing feelings, so that you don't have to always run to a therapist to know what's going on and what's being triggered. Of course, we always want to know that there's somebody out there for us in our court if there's a life event or we're getting too off kilter. And of course, I have people who come back after the 10 sessions for follow-up, or they come back because something happened in life that has them really hurting, and that's life. And I'm not talking about follow up and leaning on somebody in times of trouble, but wouldn't it be nice if you had a way to make yourself more sustainable and more psychoeducated? And wouldn't it be nice if you weren't just a walking wounded person, reacting and trigger happy and going down the tubes and picking partners that do same to you? Because that's what happens, is these verbal messages then become your bar. It's okay to call me names. It's okay to put me down. It's okay to demean me. It's okay. So as I say many times over, parents set the bar. And when you have parents that set this low bar, you are more likely to get into a relationship with a person who will treat you in a low bar way. And again, open up those childhood wounds and trigger all of those core beliefs. And there we go again, trapped in another horrible relationship. And even if you're not in one, you are in one, because you're in a relationship with yourself. And if those messages are going on in your brain, you're trapped in a relationship with yourself, and it's not a good one. So that's why I would love everybody to learn the mind map, whether you read about it or buy the video, or whether you enroll in our psychoeducational journey here at the Psychological Healing Center. We have some wonderful, wonderful people on staff, and I'm happy to match you with someone that's right for you, or come work with me and just start the journey. Because even if we have everything in the world going for us, if we don't have our mental health, it's really, really very difficult to enjoy our life. So I'm going to see if there are any other questions, and anybody else want to call in, leave a little bit of a space for that. Any other questions?
No questions, just more comments.
More comments. Okay. So I hope that you are all getting this. Okay. There are wounds of childhood. They react in you. They encode in you. They take you down. And the more self-aware you are, the less of a sucker you're going to be for horrible relationships and repeated patterns. And the ultimate is not really being affected by other people's comments. So wouldn't it be lovely if they could call you whatever they want, and you can just look at them and think, how sick, how sad, how toxic, want nothing to do with it. That's really nothing to do with me. That's their sickness and their projections and their pain showing up in the world, and I'm just going to move away from it, as opposed to hooking right into the words and swallowing them and ingesting them and digesting them and getting a stomach ache and then manifesting them in some sort of a defense mechanism that makes it worse, like smoking or drinking or overeating or shutting down to the world. So do you see how this creates this huge reactive mess and breakdown? And that's why it is so important to heal ourselves, especially before we become parents, before we become embroiled in a significant relationship. We want to bring a healthy me to another healthy me so that we can have what I call synergy. 1 + 1 is greater than 2. And that would be panel number 7, which is also my logo, the 3 circles, or the circles intertwining and bringing out the light and the best in each other. And that's what the mind map is taking you toward, is this paradigm shift where you're that healthy, developed individual, and you're choosing healthy, developed individuals, and you're moving away from toxicity, and you're gravitating toward others who are like-minded and more equivalent in mental health. Because if you're not mentally healthy, again, you're going to end up with people who are probably not all that mentally healthy also. So that's why you want to become that healthy individualism, so that you have more to give to another healthy individualism, and you won't drag each other down and trigger each other and demean and devalue and destroy the relationship and really vampire all the energy out of each other. So if there are no more questions in the chat room, anybody else want to ask a quick question?
No questions as of yet, Dr. G.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone for joining in, and I hope that you're learning and growing and get all the material you can to be psychoeducated so that you could be the cause of the best possible outcome for part 2 of your life. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my channel. If you need help, please call the number below.